Greetings all, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Jane Eyre Project as we continue to read through books related to Jane Eyre. In today's video, we are embarking upon My Plain Jane by three authors, Cynthia Hand, Brodie Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. From what I understand, this is sort of a satire or comedy story centering around Jane Eyre, and I believe in this Charlotte Bronte is a character, and I also believe there is a situation where Jane is like a ghost hunter or something. I did read the summary in the front flap, and it did make me laugh. So let's hope for the best. The reason why I say let's hope for the best is this is the second book in the Janie series, and I did try to read My Lady Jane, and I got, I don't know, maybe a couple of chapters in, and I was like, this is not for me. I found that comedy sometimes doesn't really hit its mark with me in terms of books. I think I really enjoy that sort of thing in movies and television, but I struggle with it in novels for whatever reason, and every once in a while something works for me. For example, I had a really good time with the Eyre Affair, which I read for this series, but I did also audiobook that predominantly, so I'm going to audiobook My Plain Jane mostly for this, but I did get a copy of the book because I kind of want to own as many of the books for this series as I can, just as a memory moment, and also just in case I want to read along. I think I got this for $7, so I thought, hey, what the heck, might as well read along while I listen. And I just kind of hope that I get as much enjoyment out of the book as I did out of reading the little comedic flap of the summary of the book. There seems to be a really funny element of her not only seeing dead people, but them making fun of her making really bad romance choices, which if you're somebody that has followed the series for a long time, we love Edward Rochester, but he also super problematic. So that makes sense. I don't foresee this video having a ton of spoilers in it, but I will let you know if for some reason I think something is spoilery and give you a signal for that, but I doubt it. These last few I've been kind of trying to keep spoiler free just for the sake that I feel like I can get over analytical sometimes. In the month of July, I will be reading the book Jane Steele by Lindsay Fay. So if you want to read that book along with me and join me on that reading adventure, that's what I will be reading in July. And that video will hopefully be up on July 31st. Let's go on with the whole video. So I'm about 104 pages into the book. Don't know what that is in hours in the audiobook, but I feel like the audiobook for this was definitely the way to go for me. I first of all really love that the audiobook started out with this very old movie sort of music that's the kind of thing that you'd maybe hear in a Hitchcock film, or just one of those really weaving kind of mystery. Noir is the word I was looking for. I've been trying to figure out what that word is since I heard the music, and I just could not think of it. So it's been bugging me for days. I am enjoying the humor quite a bit, especially since I do think humor works for me much better in audiobook, and I think the reader is doing a really good job of getting across the voices and making it funny, and getting across the timing of the comedy in the book, which I really appreciate. I would say that the sense of humor is a mix of Jasper Ford's book, The Eyre Affair, which I read for this series a long while ago, and then maybe something like the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger. So if you like the humor in either of those sort of things, like that wacky British comedy vibe, I think that you will probably like the humor in this. We basically are following 3 characters. One is Jane, one is Charlotte Bronte, and the other is a man named Alexander. So Jane's storyline is about her basically seeing dead people. Because of her experience in the Red Room, as we know from Jane Eyre, she can now see dead people. Charlotte Bronte is sort of fulfilling the noir role of the quirky reporter kind of vibe. So she wants to be a writer, and she's basically just sort of observing everybody and trying to get in on kind of the action of the piece, be it with sort of the ghost mystery stuff and also some of her own things that she wants to accomplish in that I'm the spunky reporter kind of way, which is ever so fun. Then Alexander is somebody that works for this foundation that was set up by George III by the mythology of this book. And he works for this thing called the, Royal Society for the Relocation of Wayward Spirits. They're kind of like the Victorian Ghostbusters. As I discovered, when I was reading Death of a Schoolgirl, that Jane Eyre initially, in its actuality, does take place during Georgian and Regency eras. This book is taking place in Victorian era because that is how Charlotte and Jane can go to the Lillywhite School together. Oh, although for historical purposes, I will mention that Queen Victoria is not yet queen. But I looked up the dates, and the dates say that the Victorian era started when this book starts, the date this book starts. But it's important to note that Victoria is not yet queen because of other things that happen later in the book. Jane is just becoming a teacher at the Lillywhite School, and Charlotte is still a student. So are her sisters Emily and Anne Bronte. Bramwell Bronte serves as the bumbling assistant to Alexander, and I think it's fitting. Actually, Charlotte's like, I love my brother, but he's a bit of a screw up, which really works because in real life, bless his soul, he wasn't a together dude. It's the nicest way I could say it. And a note on that is that one of my favorite things so far about the story is that it is really extra fun if you're somebody that knows something additional about the Bronte family or Charlotte Bronte. I personally like to watch documentaries on that type of thing, so I caught on to the little Charlotte Bronte quotes or the little nods to real life elements that the authors threw into the book regarding Charlotte, and I really got either a giggle out of those or just thought they were super fun. By the way, if you want to learn more about the Bronte sisters or Charlotte Bronte or anything like that, I will try to remember to link you some documentaries that are on YouTube if you want to check them out in the description, because they probably will make this book even more fun. The book is doing pretty good at having a really good balance of having its own plot specific to this and actually drawing in the Jane Eyre plot quite a bit. So it's following kind of the beats of the Jane Eyre plot, but the reasoning for the beats is a little different, if that makes sense. So Jane has her own new sort of reasons for wanting to become a governess. Oh, by the way, Helen is a ghost in this, and she is very afraid of humans, which is super hilarious. But in that beat, you get lots of fun references to other literature, which I thought was a kick. I particularly love the Dracula references. So when Jane shows up at the Thornfield Hall, there's all these hilarious Dracula references that you might not catch if you haven't read or watched any Dracula content, but I have done both things, so I caught onto them, and it was like super kick. And I'm assuming that it might make more references to similar Victorian reads. Another really funny one was, I think it actually made a Princess Bride reference, because you know how Rochester is always saying that Jane is like an elf or a witch or whatever. And at one point Jane goes, "I'm not a witch, I'm a governess." Which was kind of like, I'm not a witch, I'm your wife. And because Charlotte and Alexander are like new elements to the Jane Eyre story, I'm very excited to see where their journeys go. I really quite like how Charlotte is written, and I also am really enjoying Alexander's experience and just getting to see kind of the new world building that the authors as a collective have created for him. And it's always kind of fun to see how like the ghost element is working out so far in the story. So yeah, I'll update you in a little bit and let you know what I think of the next 100 pages, how it's going. Hopefully it can keep up the good roll. I feel like I'm always wearing this t-shirt in the second update of like every one of these videos in the last couple of videos, maybe more than a couple of videos. I do own more than this I'm Not Weird, I'm Limited Edition shirt. I just really like to wear it. Anyway, I'm digressing, and I haven't even started talking about my second update on this book. So I'm on page 290, which means I'm very close to the end. I think I have like a little over an hour left in the audiobook. Still really enjoying the book. There have been some fun developments. Bran, Charlotte, and I called him Bran. Branwell, Charlotte, and Alexander have kind of created this comedic trio, if you will, as they try to get a particular job done. Turns out, too, that Alexander has a chip on his shoulder, a bit of a "you killed my father, prepare to die" moment revenge plot, which is extra fun. I do so love these Princess Bride references. And that is the kind of fun thing about this book so far, is that while the Jane and Rochester kind of plot line does sort of follow a lot of the Jane Eyre plot, the side plot with, well, it's not even the side plot. The main plot is really about the Alexander and Charlotte Bronte and Branwell Bronte and them figuring out all the mysteries going on with the, what do they call it in short? I don't know. The Royal Society for Relocation of Wayward Spirits. So what is it? RSW? I think is what they call it in short. My brain is not very good with acronyms. But yeah, so that's where like the good juicy bits are, and that's where a lot of the new plot elements are, so that you don't get like repeats of the Jane Eyre story. But when you do get stuff from the Jane Eyre story, they're very sure to make it really comedic. There's a lot of this parody based upon the fact that, you know, there's this idea that what we find romantic in books is not either really applicable to real life circumstances, and or it's actually really unhealthy in real life circumstances. There's lots of references to Mr. Darcy and how we often idealize sort of, behaviors or relationship types or tropes when they're not really very well applied in real life. But, we've gotten in the rote of really embracing them as things that we like in literature, but maybe we wouldn't love so much in practicality. My Plain Jane is really trying to play on the idea and the humor that Rochester is really problematic and is kind of shady when you look at some of the things. And while you kind of feel the need to forgive him for that in Jane Eyre, because you can like see all the circumstances, maybe if you actually knew the guy, you wouldn't. Also, Jane is a bit silly in this book because of that parody. Like, she's giving up all these career opportunities she could have, or better things, because I'm in love with this man that I barely know. And so there's sort of this fun silliness about the idea of how characters in literature or in movies, like that Hallmark movie romance kind of vibe, this romance heroine that's making all these like maybe impractical decisions because she's in love even though she barely knows this person. Ghost of Helen continues to be a kick. She's also kind of helpful and kind of like the voice of reason. She's kind of like speaking some truths to Jane. And she does it though in this like wacky look at me way, which is very amusing, and I quite like that. Fun references to Victorian literature part 2. Alexander has an apartment on Baker Street, so he's living not very far from Sherlock Holmes. The book 2 also made me look up the historical figure Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington, because he heads the Ghost Society, and I just thought it would be fun. I will link that info below if you just also are somebody that likes to look stuff up on Wikipedia, just to Wikipedia dive. I don't know what to call it, but it is fun how this book like uses real people and historical figures in like new and interesting ways, and it kind of makes you want to go and like look them up. You know, whenever there's a society, you wonder if something up, you know, because it's, you know, power plays. I don't know. I think something's up. Somebody's shady up in there. I will say that in terms of just plot and the mix of how the comedy is thrown in and like the sillier elements, I think there's a really good mix of having like fun, silly comedy without it like having a tone that makes it like cross into like the stupid zone or like the repetitive joke zone, which I really appreciate. And also it's a good balance of having a structured plot and also having like those little bits of randomness that make the book funny. So it's doing its job. I am still enjoying it. So I'm just going to continue reading and let you know when I've finished the book what I thought of it as a whole. So I've completed my Plain Jane, and before I get to my final thoughts, I'm going to, wait, let me scoot this back a little bit so I don't have to like hunch into the frame. I'm going to discuss some of my just joys for the like end of the book. So the literary and like film references in this section were particularly excellent and deeply funny. They definitely were things that I knew and like made me laugh so hard. So obviously more Princess Bride references. We already established that floats my boat. My favorite though was during the interrupted wedding of Rochester and Jane, where Rochester was like trying to hurry along and he like Prince Humperdinck was like, say man and wife, just say man and wife. I was like died laughing. There were some amusing references to both Wuthering Heights and Emma. Also a surprising yet not at all surprising, because of the ghosts, reference to the excellent film that is The Mummy. But my highlight favorites were the ones that, of course, referenced my favorite thing next to, you know, Jane Eyre, obviously, Anne of Green Gables. Charlotte Bronte has a carpet bag with a broken handle, not unlike the heroine Anne. And also, she often continues to think about being in the depths of despair, which... The Anne fans like me are just dying laughing. It was a good time. I almost forgot there was actually a hugely humorous reference to Lord of the Rings. So it hit all my favorite things. Plot-wise, the last quarter of the book had some really good twists and some really good action going on. I really liked how one particular twist in the book did do some really fun elements with the Bertha storyline and also Edward Rochester's backstory. I particularly like too that the twists with some of the ghost elements were based in that we're doing something wacky with actual historical figures. I always like when these books can work in Charlotte Bronte's pen name just as a nice, I don't know, Easter egg for us Jane Eyre fans, I suppose. So we got a nice Currer Bell moment there. Okay, the whole point of this is to deviate from the actual historical fact of everything. And I don't say this as a negative, but it does definitely deviate from the actual historical fact of the Bronte family's lives and things that happen to them. And it's actually a good thing because in your little reader heart, there's an alternate universe where things are incredibly sad for them. And that just made my heart happy. Okay, so I'm genuinely pleased and surprised. I loved this book. I did not think I was going to like this book. I had a lot of hesitation about reading it leading up, and it turned out it was needless because this was a absolutely fun 5-star book for me. The humor hit exactly how I wanted it to, and the references in it were all ones that were ones that I got. I don't know if it will be the same for somebody that doesn't get all the references, but I think it will at least be fun, and the comedy that doesn't have to do with pop culture references or literature references will still be stuff that's funny to you, even if those aren't things that you are engaged with directly. So I think if you like this kind of humor and you either want to read this in audiobook or read this in print, you will have a super good time if you just really like commentary on the romance novel and also a good mystery sort of action situation. I may try the audiobooks of the other books in the series because like I said, I am intrigued with the concept of them. I just didn't have a good experience with that one book, but I think I probably would have had a better experience in audiobook as I read this one. So I'm going to give the other books in the series a try because there's the Janies and then there's the books about different Marys, I believe. And that sounds interesting to me. So yes, a successful read, another successful read. Yes. That is it for my reading of My Plain Jane. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I was particularly babbly in it, but that's just because, I don't know, the comedy in it made me very excited and up and peppy, and I think that's why. And I will see you all soon with another video. So thank you for watching. Bye.